started to expect too much without giving anything in return. Or perhaps they've become dismissive of your feelings. This is, have you ever felt like someone in your life doesn't value you as much as they once did? Maybe it's a friend, a partner, or even a colleague. At first, everything seemed perfect, you felt appreciated, respected, and seen. But over time, something changed. They started taking you for granted, and the more you tried to fix things, the worse it seemed to get. It's painful, isn't it? But what if I told you there's a simple shift you can make that could completely change this dynamic? Stick with me, because today we're diving deep into how to handle situations when someone stops valuing you, and how you can reclaim your power in the process. Let me tell you a story. Sarah had always been the type of person who gave everything to her relationships. With her best friend, Emily, she was always the one to initiate plans, check in, and make sure Emily felt supported. But one day, Sarah noticed something unsettling. Emily had stopped putting in the same effort. Messages went unanswered for hours or even days. Invitations to hang out were met with vague excuses. Sarah felt hurt and confused. Her first instinct was to try harder. She thought, maybe if I'm more available or show her how much I care, she'll appreciate me again. But it didn't work. In fact, the harder Sarah tried, the more distant Emily became. That's when Sarah realized something powerful: she couldn't force someone to value her. What she could do, however, was value herself. And that's where everything began to change. The truth is, when someone stops valuing us, our natural response is often counterproductive. We overcompensate, thinking that by proving our worth, we can reignite their appreciation. But here's the counterintuitive reality: the most effective thing you can do isn't to give more of yourself, it's to step back. Why does stepping back work? It's rooted in human psychology. When something or someone is always readily available, we're more likely to take it for granted. Think about it: how often do you truly notice the sun on a clear day? Probably not as much as you notice its absence during a storm. The same principle applies to relationships. When you step back, you create space. And in that space, the other person begins to notice your absence. They start to realize what they've been taking for granted. But let's be clear, stepping back isn't about playing games or manipulating someone's feelings. It's about shifting your focus from them to yourself. Instead of pouring all your energy into repairing a one-sided relationship, channel that energy into your own growth and happiness. Here's what Sarah did. She stopped chasing Emily's attention and started prioritizing herself. She picked up a new hobby she'd always wanted to try: painting. She reconnected with other friends who made her feel appreciated. She even started journaling, reflecting on what she truly wanted in her relationships. As Sarah grew more confident and fulfilled, something interesting happened. Emily began to notice the change. She reached out, asking Sarah why she'd been so distant lately. But by then, Sarah had a new perspective. She wasn't desperate for Emily's approval anymore. She'd learned to value herself first. And that's the key. When you focus on becoming the best version of yourself, you naturally attract the right kind of attention. People are drawn to confidence, independence, and strength. They're drawn to those who set boundaries and respect themselves enough to walk away from situations where they're not valued. Speaking of boundaries, let's talk about why they're essential. Often, when someone stops valuing you, it's because they've crossed an emotional line. Maybe they view your boundaries come in. Setting boundaries isn't about being harsh or confrontational, it's about communicating your limits clearly and confidently. For example, Sarah decided to set a boundary with Emily. She told her, "I value our friendship, but I've noticed that I've been putting in a lot more effort lately. I need to feel like this relationship is mutual." By expressing her feelings honestly, Sarah gave Emily the opportunity to step up. And if she didn't? Sarah was prepared to let go, knowing she deserved better. Here's the beautiful part about stepping back and setting boundaries: it's a win-win. If the person who stopped valuing you realizes their mistake and makes an effort to change, your relationship becomes stronger and more balanced. If they don't, you've created space for someone else to enter your life, someone who will truly appreciate and value you. But how do you stay strong during this process? It can be tempting to revert to old patterns, especially if you're afraid of losing the person entirely. This is where self-care and self-investment come in. Spend time doing things that make you happy. Learn a new skill, reconnect with supportive friends, or focus on your career goals. When you're busy building a life you love, you'll find it easier to let go of relationships that no longer serve you. Let's dive a little deeper into the power of self-investment. Think of it as planting seeds for a brighter future. When you start nurturing your passions, building your confidence, and setting new goals, you create an energy that others can't help but notice. Sarah, for instance, didn't just stop at painting. She took a local art class, where she met people who shared her interests. These new connections made her realize that her worth wasn't tied to one friendship or person. She discovered a world of possibilities, all because she decided to invest in herself. Another aspect to consider is the role of gratitude. Often, when we're stuck in one-sided relationships, we focus so much on what's lacking that we forget to appreciate the good things in our lives. Gratitude shifts your mindset. Start by listing 3 things you're grateful for every day, no matter how small. It could be a kind word from a stranger, a sunny day, or even your favorite cup of coffee. This practice not only boosts your mood but also helps you recognize your own value, independent of how others treat you. One more thing to remember, letting go doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're making space for something better. When Sarah finally let go of her expectations for Emily, she found that her life opened up in ways she couldn't have imagined. She had more time and energy to spend on things that truly mattered to her. And when Emily eventually reached out to reconnect, Sarah was able to approach the situation from a place of strength and self-respect, rather than desperation. Finally, let's talk about the importance of patience. Change doesn't happen overnight. Whether you're waiting for someone to realize your worth or simply working on valuing yourself more, it's a process. Be kind to yourself during this journey. Surround yourself with people who uplift you, engage in activities that bring you joy, and remind yourself daily that you are enough, just as you are. To wrap up, let me leave you with this thought: people will always value what they fear losing. When you respect yourself enough to step back and focus on your own growth, you send a powerful message. You show that you're not willing to settle for less than you deserve. And in doing so, you take back control of the dynamic, whether that means repairing the relationship or moving on to something better. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.